What's up, everybody? It's your girl, Kairi Thomas-Brooks, and welcome back to another live show, 21 Questions, where we bring officers from around the nation onto our show to ask them serious questions about what's going on in today's society. I am an aspiring civil rights lawyer. I am an advocate for this amazing initiative called Hey Blue. Hey Blue has been facilitating meaningful connections between police officers in the community for about 2 years now. On our show, 21 Questions, I will be asking the officer 10 questions. He or she will be asking me 10 questions back, and our 21st question will come from our audience. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest, our next guest, from the Austin, Texas Police Department, Officer Jeremy Bohannon.
Hey, what's up, Kairi? How are you doing today?
Good. How are you? Thank you for joining us.
No, thanks for having me. This is awesome. Thank you.
Whew. All right. How are you doing today? You feeling all right?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I had a good day at work. Got home with the kids, hung out a little bit, and just excited to be here and get through these 21 questions with you. I'm excited about this. This is gonna be so much fun.
All right, cool. So how about you tell us a little bit about yourself, officer?
Okay, so I'm a 12-year law enforcement, I guess you can call it, veteran. I work in Austin, Texas. I did 4 years at the University of Texas Police Department, and then I transferred over to the Austin Police Department. So I've been with them for about 8 years now. I love what I do. I spent a lot of time not only on patrol, but then I moved over to doing community policing. So I did a lot of youth engagement projects, and I work with the Police Activities League of Austin. And now I just recently transferred over to the recruiting unit. And so I recruit and try to help bring on new applicants and internship people onto the department.
How is that working, like hands-on? Is it fun being involved in all of that?
Yeah, it's really fun. We get to interact with a lot of people that you normally wouldn't get to. And so you get to see the value of the positive encounters and positive interactions that you can have with this job.
Wow, that's really sweet. All right. Well, I want to jump into these questions right away for you.
All right, let's get it.
I have my first question for you, Officer Bohannon, and that would be, why did you become a police officer in the first place?
Now, that's a great question. So, growing up, I never thought I would be a police officer. I didn't hate police officers, but I just try to avoid them. I was the one that if I saw them, I'd go the other way, or if I was driving, I'd go the other way. And so, after I got done playing football, I played college football, played overseas in Austria professionally. When I got done, I was like, man, I got to start a career and I got to do something. So I was driving and I saw a photo of or a billboard of the Department of Corrections in Washington. So I started working at a penitentiary. I did that for about a year. And one of my supervisors thought I would make a great law enforcement officer. And I was like, never. But then we ended up moving down to Texas. And I started applying, and I got my first job with the University of Texas Police Department. So I didn't really consider it until about a year before I got on.
Wow. So your opinion was at first you didn't want to do it. Was there a reason why you never wanted to be an officer, or was it just something you weren't interested in?
Yeah, I was something I wasn't interested. I was growing up and football was my thing. You know what I mean? And so just like most kids, most people out there, football, was pretty much life for me. I went to college for it. I always tell people when I went to college, I went on a football scholarship. To me, being a student was kind of secondary. And that's just my personal story, and I thought football would be it. And so I had to pivot and figure things out because, it didn't work out for me. So I didn't really have a plan B. And then, got into corrections. I met my wife, who actually pushed me into trying to be a better person and get a career and all that good stuff. So it was awesome.
That's amazing. That's amazing. All right, officer, my second question to you would be, what is one of the most embarrassing moments you've had on the job so far?
Oh, man, I've had a lot of embarrassing moments. But I would say I was working at the University of Texas. It was actually a AC/DC concert at University of Texas at Frank Erwin Center. We were arresting a female. She was a little bit older. She was topless, and she was highly intoxicated. So we were arresting her, and we get her onto the elevator, and she's kicking everybody, right? And so, I'm behind her, and there's about 4 other officers on the elevator. And so I put my leg, against the back of her leg so then she wouldn't kick the rest of the officers. And then next thing you know, I just felt this rush of warmth on my leg. And that warmth was actually her urinating on my leg. And that went all the way down into my shoe. So that was pretty embarrassing, and a story that even some of my friends, that it's almost been 10 years since that's happened, they still bring up.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Way to go to work. They're never going to let you live that one down.
Oh no, I got it all, a pissy leg, stuff like that. So
wow. That's pretty embarrassing. So my third question to you would be, what's one of the hardest scenes that you've had to respond to?
One of the hardest scenes, I would have to say, I was pretty young. I was probably a year or two on at Austin, and there was a big collision on our major freeway on I-35. It was involving about 5 or 6 cars. The worst part about it was there was a lot of children involved in it. Luckily, there were no fatalities, but a lot of people, when I got there, were out. There were some people on the ground. It was just a mess, and I was the first officer there. And so it was really the first time I had to deal with like a chaotic scene where I'm telling people where to go and what to do and trying to coordinate all of these entities like ambulance and fire and getting them to help block. So it was really just chaotic, and it was really hard to see, kids that were injured, them going to the hospital. Everybody was fine, thank God, after that. But it was just one of those scenes where it's like, if you heard about it, you would be like, there's no way I could do it. But it really helped me in the rest of my career, realizing that, hey, I can do this. If I just put my mind to it and just calm myself down, just remember the way I was trained and do everything the way that I was trained, then I can pretty much handle any scene.
Wow. That must have been, and you said you were 2 years into it?
Yeah, I think I was 2 years into my second Austin Police Department. So.
Wow. Interesting way to just jump right into it. My fourth question for you, officer, would be, since you're an officer, being a police officer, if you were to be pulled over at night, do you feel protected because you wear a badge? You work for the Austin Police Department, or do you feel sort of skeptical being that you're an African-American male?
That is a great question, and actually something I was just talking to another friend about earlier today, actually. I don't, because I'm not always wearing my uniform. Even sometimes when I am wearing my uniform, you still never know what could happen. There's a lot of variables. Anything can happen. Right. And so I do what I preach to any kid, any adult, anybody. I always do the same thing. Like if it's nighttime, I always turn my lights on. My windows aren't too highly tinted, but I roll them down. I keep my hands on the steering wheel, and I'm, yes sir, no sir, I'm not making any sudden moves or anything. And so I'm nervous even if it's daytime, when I'm driving, I was driving today and, there was an officer, probably I knew who it probably was on the side of the road, but I still get nervous, and that's a big thing for me, is that I know that even if I get nervous as an officer, probably even knowing who it is, then I know that it's 10 to 100 to 1,000 times more nervousness for somebody else. And that's something I've always realized. And that helps me when I do my approaches on vehicles, because I know somebody's going to be nervous. I don't think they're nervous because they're committing a crime. So, yes, I get nervous, but, I just do what I know that I'm supposed to do, and everything's always going to be fine for me.
Now, my fifth question to you would be your beautiful daughter, Billy, yes?
Yeah, Billy.
She's so gorgeous, by the way.
Thank you.
Teaching her about her mannerisms when it comes to police officers.
Uh-huh.
She sees dad, and you're an amazing officer who she sees every day. And again, there's, on the flip side, not so good cops.
Mm-hmm.
How do you teach her when it comes to her mannerisms towards police officers?
No, that's great. I teach her the same way that I tell her to treat her teachers or another adult or even myself, is always be respectful no matter what, and for her, it's one of those things. And this is kind of where I take my policing and where I have my approach from, is because I see where my kids are at, even now being 5 and 7. When they see a police officer, they're actually kind of excited because they know daddy's a police officer, and they're filled with a lot of positive things when it comes to policing, where most kids, I'd say the majority of kids and people in this country, don't get, and so that's why it's very important for the work that I do, the work that a lot of officers try to do around this country, is in creating those positive encounters. And so for her, she knows that she's supposed to be respectful. It's yes, sir, no, sir, no matter, yes, sir, no, ma'am, no matter who it is or where you're at, it doesn't matter. And so having that upbringing is going to help her as she gets older, because she understands what I do as a job. And so I just hope that other kids can have that same type of experience growing up.
Wow. That was a really good answer. I was like, all right. No, that is a really good answer. Because most parents, being in the career field that you're in, it's, everyone has a different aspect of what to teach, what not to teach. Yeah. And I'm really curious, being that, you are an officer. So how you approach that situation was really interesting to me.
Yeah, thanks, Kairi. And I'll add one thing to that really quick. It's a big thing when, for us, especially officers, we want to have those positive interactions. We want to be able to, be seen in a better light. And a lot of officers, they try their best to do that. And, we have those people out there that erode the trust. And so something that can help, if you're not an officer, is talking to your kids, about police, and talking about the good things. You can still include the bad, but when you give somebody all bad information or all, right, all of the bad stuff, then they're going to be afraid, and fear. And, that fear is a learned fear. And so we have to figure out a way to balance that out where you're still, you're still cautious. You don't know who you're going to deal with. But you also know that, there's a whole bunch of these guys out here and girls out here that only care about their safety and want them to succeed.
Right. Wow. So my sixth question to you, officer, would be, how do you cope with being an officer dealing with all the other officers and issues that are going on with police brutality in the country? What are you doing personally to make sure that you shed light on that's more of the negative than it is the positive?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kairi. I've always struggled with, okay, like how do I pretty much humanize the badge, right? And I started this 6-7 years ago by creating my social media platforms, not only using that, but also, pre-COVID, going to schools and going and, talking and doing extra things to try to promote the great work that a lot of these officers do, and shed light on that. And so even today, that's pretty much what I think about 24/7. It's like, I understand both sides. I understand why people are afraid of the police. I understand why the police are afraid of people protesting. I get it. And I'm trying to just get everybody to understand that, hey, there's a middle ground that we can all come together. We have to understand that there's issues, and there's things that both sides we need to fix, but we can always do it together. So I cope by knowing and having optimism and being, just being hopeful that the future is going to be very bright.
Wow. So leading off of that question, I saw on your Instagram that you went to a protest in your uniform. You went home, came back, and you were in just regular clothes. Mm-hmm. What drove you to want to show up there in uniform and then wanting to show up there as just you, humanized as you could be?
So the uniform part, what drove me is the protests themselves and us getting called back in to have to work. And so that made me go and be out there. But then, when I was home and just, watching and seeing all of the unrest and, my grandfather was a pastor before he passed. And, he always, I knew that he was just looking down on me, and really I was just kind of in tears, and I didn't know what I could do. And really, I just wanted to protect people. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I see what's happening. I want to get out there, kind of listen, see what's going on, but then let people know, hey, let's come together somehow. Let's have like a forum. Let's talk. Let's figure this stuff out. But then once dusk hits and things start getting crazy, let's go home. You know what I mean? That was my biggest thing. It's like, let's just go home. I was trying to make a commitment that we would just talk, you know what I mean? And just come up with solutions so that we don't have to be out in the streets anymore, because I saw some of the bad things that were happening that had nothing to do with the people that actually wanted real change. And so I actually went out in this shirt. So it was no question that I was a cop, and it was tough, and I got challenged a lot out there, and it's probably one of the hardest things that I've ever done. But at the end, looking back, like it was the best thing that I ever could have done in my entire career, because people really started to understand that, hey, there's people in this in this that wear this uniform that really care about them and really want to find solutions to make the world better.
Right. That must have been tough because, biases have already been instilled in a lot of people. You being officer at a protest, it's sort of like, is it a pro? Is it a con? You know what I mean? Especially in this time. That's tough. So me as a member of the community, even though I do not live in Austin, Texas, I really appreciate you doing something like that because I know I would feel, one, protected, and two, heard with an officer marching, with me at a protest, making sure I'm safe. And, if it was or wasn't something you stood for, just being out there on your own time. You know what I mean? So I appreciate that. My 8th question for you would be, as a African-American officer dealing with your Caucasian officer, your coworkers, do you ever feel like it's your job to teach the biases that have been instilled in young Black men or young Black females coming from an African-American background to your coworkers when it comes to being fearful of the police, you know what I mean? Things like that. Do you feel like it's your job to teach them, or?
That's a great question, Kairi. I would say, and I wouldn't say, it's all Caucasians or all, because I feel like there's a lot of information that both sides really need to, we need to talk and sit down. And so, honestly, like I've never thought or felt like it was actually my job to do. But at some point when nothing's happening and nobody's doing it, you got to be like, who's going to do it? And so I took that upon, and it was a huge burden for me, because you're trying to get people to understand both sides. So I'm doing it not only for the community, my family, my friends, but I'm also doing it with my peers at work, my colleagues, and trying to get them to understand the other side as well. And so, and I when I was in front of the Texas football team, I told them, look, I've been spending a lot of time on the community trying to get them to understand policing, but I feel like I failed the community by not spending more time trying to get my colleagues to understand why there's a disconnect and why there's fear. And I think the biggest thing that we don't do in policing is talk about that actual history of policing, the full thing. And so, we get facts, and I always say this, people always want to say keep it 100. But really, we're only keeping it 50. You know what I'm saying? I wish there was a little emoji on there that actually had like a 50 instead of a 100, because what's happening is we're getting 50, but we're not getting 100. And if we got 100, then people would actually understand why there's so much fear and why, the community has to give the talk, why that happens, And so once we start breaking down and start giving the actual full truth instead of just half truths, because we work in half truths on both sides,
right?
And it goes both ways. And so, but there's 100% in there that we need to do. That's in the middle. There's 50 on this side and 50 on this side of the story that doesn't get told. And I've been spending a lot of time with the community, giving that other 50. And now I feel like it's on me to give the other 50 to my colleagues as well, because I thought what we were doing was good enough. And I don't think it was.
Thank you. For one, there's not very many officers who are able to realize that, especially with dealing with in the workforce, because sometimes, this is, just my job. This is what I do. So let me go to work every day and just get my job over with. You know what I mean? It's no one really has that drive to be like, okay, guys, listen, this is what's going on. We got to meet in the middle. It's got to be 100 to 100 each side. We got to come in. We got to do something about it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Kairi. You're absolutely right.
So my 9th question for you, officer, would be, what was one of your more lighter days at work? Like one of your more fun calls that you got?
That's probably the hardest question, because I always have fun at work. Like I literally have fun every time I work patrol. Like I work with some great people, you know what I mean? And it's awesome to be able to go in, have a good time. There's a lot of great supervisors, and we have a great bubbly time. And then we get out there and, we try to make make our day as fun as we can, at the best that we can. You know what I mean? And so almost like this is why, people always ask, like, how has it been? I'm like, I love being a cop. It's like one of the best jobs in the world. You get to see a lot of things and you get to interact with a lot of people. And really, you have that power to make it fun. Even on a bad call, you can always turn it around to being positive and lighthearted. And, we hold a lot of power, with this badge, and we have that opportunity to turn something in horrible, or we can make it good and make people feel good. And so that's what I like most about it. So I couldn't give you one specific time. It was just like awesome, because I always have fun, even when I'm doing community policing stuff, when I'm patrolling. There's a lot of fun to be had in the uniform.
Wow. That's a really optimistic answer. And again, you don't get a lot of people because I say that because there's a lot of people who just, like I said, they just go to work.
Yeah.
It's just, let me go to work every day. Let me get the paycheck. Let me come home. Not a lot of people look at it from an optimistic point of view, where it's like, okay, like, how do I make this fun? My dad always tells me that if I'm bored or I feel like it's a chore, then it's not something that I really love. It's just work. So
yeah, definitely.
Being passionate about something makes it like 10 times better.
Yeah. Your dad is a very smart man, and just by knowing you, I know he's a really smart man. So that's a great quote.
Thank you. Okay, so my 10th and final question for you, officer. I'm still thinking about that, because I'm just like, wow.
We can stay on that if you want to. So let's go back real quick, because like that time, like there's people like that, and that's the beauty of policing. You know what I mean? Like the policing is just like every other job. You know what I mean? Yes, it's a lot more scrutinized, and I can talk about why it's scrutinized and all that stuff. There's just not enough trust. But it's just like any other job. You're going to have like overperformers, underperformers, people who go all out, people who just want to get the minimum done, people, and you have that, and then you have people that, they love doing traffic stops, or they love, getting DWIs. They love helping, children. They love, like everybody has their own thing and their own niche and their own thing that they like, their own pet peeves. So we're all human. And so, there's some people that just come to work and just do it, and that's fine. And I don't have any ill will, as long as you're doing it honestly, you're doing it ethically, and you're helping the community, you're doing what you need to do for the community. Then that's great, And so I don't want to like knock somebody that's not maybe optimistic or having a hard time with policing, because let's face it, it is a hard job. It is one of the toughest things that really I've ever done, and I've been in a lot of different environments. And, so we have to understand that mentally it is really hard. We have a lot of officers committing suicide and this and that. And so what you're saying is it's absolutely true. And it's crazy, but I think it needs to be known that, hey, we're still human and we're still fighting. And there's a lot of people in this uniform that don't listen to the rhetoric, and they go out every single day, still today, and they do the best they can do for their community.
Right. No matter what's going on. Right. Wow. Okay. So I think I can tie that into like my 10th question. So, how do you feel? My 10th question for you would be, how do you feel about training with the workforce? Do you feel like diversity training needs to be implemented more? Do you feel like diversity training needs to be implemented less? I would like to know your opinion on that.
That's a great question. So I work in a department. We've done a lot of different diversity type trainings. We've done cultural diversity. We've done implicit bias, de-escalation, like you call it, you name it, right? I think that there needs to be more, and kind of what I had alluded to earlier was more on the history, because I get the question all the time. It's like, why are we having so much trouble? Why do people not just respect us? Like, I'm a cop, you got to respect me. This is me. I'm here to help you. You got to respect me. And people don't understand that history, and I could spend an hour talking about it, but I won't. So I've tried my best to give the cliff note on what I feel like every police officer needs to understand. And when I go back and talking about half truths, I'm talking about the 13th Amendment, right? In the 13th Amendment, it says it abolishes slavery. However, there's a clause in there that says, except, unless you're punished or commit a crime or whatever. I can't remember the words, but so unless you've committed a crime, then slavery is abolished, which means if you get convicted of something and you're in prison, now you're subjected to involuntary servitude. The criminal justice system, the prison system went from 200,000 in the 80s to 2 million, now, you know what I mean? And so when you trace that all the way back down, who are the ones that are actually contributing to that the most? And that's your street level police officers. Now, the police officers don't really understand that this is what it is. We're out here and we're like, dude, we got crime. We're trying to clean this up. Drugs, domestic violence, whatever it may be. We're trying to clean it up. And so we're going to do what we can to do that. And so you don't realize the after effect and what happens the rest of the way. And I think that's important for officers to at least understand. That doesn't mean don't do your job.
Right.
But now if you can understand, and now we actually start looking for the root causes of crime, and now we can be a huge part in fixing those root causes. So then when we see, a 14 or 15 or 16-year-old, instead of being like, oh man, like, dude, that kid's not going to make it. We'll see him in a couple of years, or, we'll punt him down the road. And then next, we're going to get him on something later. Now we're like thinking like, okay, we don't want this kid to be subjected to the system. And so how are we going to help? How are we going to provide resources? Like, how are we going to connect you with that nonprofit that's down the street that can actually do something? So then we never even have to deal with them. And now they're a successful person in the community. And now they're helping everybody else. It's a generational thing that we can do. But I just don't know how many people are thinking it. Or I don't even know if people even want to do that. But that's something that I'm willing to do. And that's what I'm fighting for.
Well, knowing the background of something before you ever go into anything is always like it. You have to have it. You know what I mean? You have to have background. When I'm playing basketball, I need it. You know what I mean? I need to know a move that I'm doing. If I don't know what I'm doing, then, I'm obviously going to mess up. So having that history on what needs to be done and how it needs to be done, gain that knowledge, and then execute it however you want to, put some finesse on it wherever you want to do. You know what I mean? So yes, I agree.
Yeah, you're right, Kairi. And I'll add to that, I think the biggest thing is that, we change in a lot of different fields, right? Like you look at the banking, and you look at social media, you look at all these things that are actually changing and evolving. People are innovating, saying, hey, why are we doing it this way? Like, why? This is a better way. This is a better way to do things.
Right.
And we have a lot of things in our country, which is why it's crazy to me. It's like everybody's afraid to change. You know what I mean? And it doesn't mean, hey, you were doing wrong. It's like, hey, man, let's do something that's better for everybody that works. And that's really why people are out in the streets, and if you're so resistant to change, that's when people start saying, hey, now it's time to dismantle because we can't get you guys to change. So then we're going to do this next best thing. And so I understand why people are like that. It's like, all we got to do is just make some positive changes and go in the right direction. And then we don't have the trouble that we have. And now officers aren't, so stressed out and feeling like people hate them.
Right. Okay, officer. Well, those are all the questions that I have for you. But before we go on to you asking me my 10 questions that you have for me, I would like to thank our sponsors. I would like to thank Central State Bank, Ben & Jerry's Ice Cream. I love their ice cream. It's so good. I would like to thank Exceed Concierge, the big brothers and big sisters of Central Florida, and the Birdie Eco School.
I would like to thank all of them too. I gotta take a quick drink with the plug. Sorry. Don't worry, we're gonna get that win this weekend. They're not a sponsor, but hey, if you guys want to sponsor, hey, we're doing great things out here, man. Hey, Blue, link up with us. Anybody from the Cowboys see this, hit us up. All right, I guess it's my time. And you know what, Kairi? Like, I'm nervous only because, like, you are such an amazing interviewer.
Thank you.
Tell everybody how old you are really quick.
I am 17 years old. I'm
17 years old, junior in high school. And, I mean, there's no way that I'm going to come close to the way that you interviewed me. I'm amazed, actually. Like, this is amazing. You're going to be on a network somewhere doing everything that you want to do. So this is awesome. So I'll start with my questions, and I'll stop making you blush. All right. So this is a question for me that I have for you, and I'm really passionate about this. I'm really passionate about schools and youth and teens. And so what is the biggest issue facing teenagers today?
The biggest issue facing teenagers today. My answer to that would probably be finding ourselves, not just through ourselves, through the education that we're brought through our household and the education that we're given outside of our household. Society wants you to act and behave a certain way. So then, you have your different groups and everything. You don't fit in. You're an outsider, things like that. And then whatever you're taught in the household, go to college, get a job. It's a lot of it clashes sometimes. And that's where it's like getting in trouble comes in a lot through that. But, as teens, it's a learning experience. So I think it's really getting to know ourselves, especially in a time like this where everything's constantly being thrown at you. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. No, I get it. You have to, you have to make your own path. You know what I mean? And
Right.
and that's awesome. And like what you're doing right here, that's what you're doing. You're getting out, you're talking, you're getting different perspectives, and and that's the best way to go. I did the same thing. When I started policing, I was getting different perspectives and different ways of doing things from everybody because there's not just one way. So that is awesome. Okay, so my second question. Okay, so how do you feel about race relations in America today?
How do I feel about race relations in America today? I feel as if, good question. Okay. Dealing with race relations in America today, I feel like it needs a lot of work. Like you were mentioning earlier when I asked you the question, I think education comes down to it, not just educating, re-educating on a lot of things that were misunderstood within high school, things that are misunderstood within college, things that parents misunderstood, and then they're teaching their children and instilling a lot of biases that no longer need to be there. Get rid of what no longer serves you is how I feel. But as you said earlier, people get comfortable in a mindset and then they don't really want to venture anywhere else. That's tough. I think it just comes down to being ignorant, and being ignorant isn't always a bad thing. You know what I mean? Like I said earlier, learning is growing. So I think it comes down to re-education. So.
Yeah. No, that's a great answer. You're right. We tend to take, especially in this day and age, like we tend to take what we get from, and really it's social media. And I have no knock on social media. I think it's a great tool. But what happens is we're fed only half. There's a great, and I don't know if we can do this, but there's a great, show on Netflix called Social Dilemma. And it really talks about that, where you're getting all your information from. It's going to be skewed to your interest. And so we have to learn how to break out of that and start doing our own research and our own educating and talking to people. And really, that's the biggest thing, is the dialogue. So, but no, that's great. The education piece is like the one of the biggest things. All right. So question number 3. And what is your feelings on armed police officers in schools?
I say toss it. I do not think it's a good idea personally. I know a lot of the school shootings have a lot to do with that idea that was, sort of persuaded into society.
Mm-hmm.
I don't agree with it, only because I don't think force is the first thing that we should be using when it comes to issues like that. Guns shouldn't have even been in the question, in my opinion. It should have been mental health and mental health educating, and how do we fix the problem without using force? You know what I mean? It's violence, in my opinion, isn't the option, especially being a person of color, walking around campus, and officers, I'm already a little standoffish, but it's like if teachers were allowed to, who are veterans are allowed to have the weapons, it's sort of like, it makes me feel even more uncomfortable in a setting where in today's society, I'm already uncomfortable. So I don't agree with it, no.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. That's a great answer. And so, I've had this discussion with, few people in the schools, and it's like, well, what do we do now? It's pretty much, it's hard to, go against somebody who's like, no, we have to have it in there because it makes us safe. And so, what I think about is like, how do we come to some type of middle ground,
right,
where our officers aren't that are in schools aren't thinking about, I'm here to arrest people, or I'm here to use force, or I'm here to, prevent something happening. It's like, hey, I'm here to make my school safe, my school climate safe. And by doing that, we're linking up with the social worker, or with the school counselors. We're linking up with, any program that's within the school. We're actually getting to know all of the kids. So if something does happen, instead of slamming them to the ground, I can be like, hey, Kairi, hey, right here, look, it's me. Hey, let's stop. Come talk to me. Let's figure out what's going on. And then start, just start and build that up, and not being a part of this school to prison pipeline, which is a real thing when you actually look at the stats, and I think people, when they look at the school to prison pipeline, they think it's cops taking people to school or taking people to jail. But that's not really what it is. It's really, these schools, we're allowing kids to fall through the cracks and whatnot. And so if a police officer can be in there and help identify some of that stuff, and then be able to link them with the right resources and the right people on campus, and being a part of that campus structure, then I feel like it'll be a little bit better. And then you won't have people afraid of the presence. And now it's just a part of, what's going on. But then if that doesn't work, I guess you got to kick them out.
Well, I thought about that as soon as you were talking about getting to know, because like you did mention the school to prison pipeline, disciplining a kid with a referral or a suspension, it's like you didn't really deal with the problem. The kid could be at school because something's going on at home, instead of let's just put you back out on the streets, where in a lot of low poverty, low income communities, that's a problem. And then it comes down to, if he can't do it in school, or she can't do it in school because some kids acting out, that's their way of saying help. They don't really know how to say it, you know what I mean? Throwing them out on the street for them to get in trouble with law enforcement is not something that you want to do. As a school, you want to educate. And if that means sitting down, connecting with your students, then, that's what you need to do. So I completely agree. Yeah.
You're right. No, you're right, Kairi. This is awesome, man. You're great. This is fun. Okay. All right. So where am I at now? See, I'm bad at this. I told you, you're so much better than I am. You know what? What's it say? Please something about your mom, or it's gonna be a long night. Oh, you better go ahead. You better say something. You got anything?
Oh gosh. My mom. Goodness gracious, my mom. When you were talking about education earlier, about the question you asked me, I think it was the second one you asked me about me being a teenager. Coming to know a strong Black woman has probably been my mom. In that sense, where she's taught me a lot of things. Where I go out and I'm like, there's just a lot of things. She put me on the spot. Yeah. Things that a mother can teach you that a father can't.
Yeah.
Dealing with my hormones, my issues. My dad's like, you're so emotional, to where I come home from school and I start ranting, and mom's like, okay, here's what it is. She gives me a lot of things, and we can connect on a lot of ways when it comes to women of color dealing with issues than my father, and me connecting in different ways. So she's taught me to be stronger in that aspect than my dad has. So
yeah. That's all. Cheers for moms. I'll say something about my mom. My mom is a rock star. She raised, 4 boys and 1 girl, pretty much by herself, and we're all doing great things because she took care. She shielded us from a lot of the crazy stuff that was happening, in our community. And, she made sure that, we always had things to do, right? So she put us in sports. We were so heavy in the church, and, I even did Boy Scouts and, karate. I had somebody come pick us up for karate. And so even though she worked a lot, she always made sure that we weren't just running around the streets. We were always doing what we needed to do. So props for moms, even though it's not Mother's Day. And even my wife, who's a mom, she's amazing. So props for all the moms out there, like legit. Okay. All right, so let me get to question 4. And actually, you kind of answered my question 4, but I'll ask it again. And the question was, if you do have police officers in your school, like, how would you like for them to be used? And so you kind of alluded to it. So I'll use that as my 4th question. So how would you want, in this perfect world, police officers in schools to be used?
I think it's exactly what you said about just building relationships. Because again, a lot of kids act out because they don't really know how to say, hey, I need help. Especially when you come from, a Black household. A lot of the times there's that instillment of, you're Black, you need to be strong, you don't ask for help, things like that mentality, the mental health that comes down. I think a lot of it is connection, like talking, communicating, knowing the kid. It's like, hey, that's not really normal. What's going on at home? You know what I mean? Come sit, come talk to me. So I think that's how I think police officers should be used in schools. So.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. And my dream job right now, like I would love to work in the schools right now. You know what I mean? Because like I just feel like I'd have so much fun, from day one. Like I have all the like I don't know if you've seen Step Brothers. It's rated R, so I don't know. But it's like you have all this room for activities and stuff, and I just like to have a good time, you're still there, you're still protecting and you're still making sure everything's secure. But you have the time to connect, like you were saying, you have to spend that time to connect. And sometimes when you're just standing there and standing in the corner and just staring at people, there's no connections being had. And not saying that all school officers do that. I know some great school officers that go above and beyond. But it needs to be the culture. That needs to be like, that's your job is to connect with these kids, find out what's going on with them. So then if something bad does happen, you can be at least a bridge to get them to that next level or to that help that they need.
Right.
All right. So question 5. So we got a message in the background talking about high school dances. Now, if we did have a high school dance today, it wouldn't be that great for me because my joints aren't as good. Like my hips don't move as fluid that they used to. But I will say this, that in middle school, I was actually high school too. I was awarded the best dancer. I don't think it had anything to do with me, being one of the only Black dudes in school, but I was awarded the best dancer, and I'll find the pictures to show you. These hips do not lie. So question 5. All right. So what advice would you give someone who is afraid to talk to cops?
I think that's going to depend on their experience with an officer. There's a lot of cognitive dissonance that comes into and goes into things like that. Especially like if I get bit by a dog, I'm not going to want to go up to another dog because it's like, you know what I mean? But if I have a positive experience with the dog, then it's like, you're more likely to go back and go to, the kennel like, hey, I think I would tell them to get out of their comfort zone. You have to realize that not every person is the same and not every experience that you're going to have is going to be the same, whether it's different in a negative way or different in a positive way. You're always going to learn something from an experience. So that's what I would tell them. That's the best advice I could give them. Alongside the anxiety and everything like that. I think that's what you got to go for. So
that is amazing advice, actually. And it goes along with what Hey Blue is all about, goes along with what I'm all about. You never know what people are going through. We don't know people's experiences. We don't know what they've gone through. Right. And so, as an officer, I always look at it from my point of view. It's like, we have to get out of our comfort zone. I'll tell you a quick story. I was working one day and one of the officers was like, hey, don't talk to that dude. You know what I mean? Like, man, I think something, is crazy. He he stared me down and blah, blah, blah. And, knowing me, I'm like, I'll talk to anybody who I want to, you know what I'm saying? Like I need to find that out myself. And so, man, I literally had an hour and a half conversation with this guy. He had been to prison, but who cares? We all make mistakes. And he was like, dude, I respect you guys. And, no ill will to that other officer, but he was kind of mean mugging me and didn't even say hi. And so I had to mean mug him back. And he was like, man, but I know you guys are doing your job. You guys are doing a great job. I want my cousins and my little brother to be a cop because I see the good work that you guys can do and you guys do. And I want, and so it was like, we just have to get out of that, until you know somebody personally, you can't talk about them. You don't know anything about them. So get out of that comfort zone. So I love that answer. And that's my perfect advice. Okay. See, I told you, Kairi, at the beginning, I ramble a lot. So I'm not as good of an interview.
It's okay.
Okay. So who do you feel influences positive change in your community? Like who do you think should be the person, or who do you think it is that would influence positive change in your community?
Adult wise, authority wise, or kid wise, youth wise? Is it just in general?
In general.
Personally, I can speak for probably myself, not to boast. A few other of my friends that I'm like close with who push change. I've got a friend who's Puerto Rican, and she's just always loud at the mouth. This is my culture, this is what we stand for. You know what I mean? Constantly educating. I have so many friends who are like me that I surround myself with, and they love to talk. Adult wise, I can't say that I've met adults like my parents, and I intern at a law firm. So I've met a whole bunch of lawyers and paralegals who have helped me, and they're great influencers of my community. But I can't say that there's a lot of adults today, sadly, who are willing to get out of that comfort zone that I was talking about earlier to be able to push change, like dealing with what we have today. Back then today, I think it's a little awkward for them. So,
yeah. So, and I love that first part when you're like, hey, I don't want to brag about myself. Brag about yourself. You know what I mean? Because and we kind of talked about this earlier, and it's like, do you feel like you have to do the educating? It's like, if I don't see anybody doing it, then that means it has to be me, right? If I know that there's something that can change and it could be positive, then it has to be me. And I struggle with this as well. It's like, man, I don't feel like I'm doing it and I'm influencing it. Did I do this, or I could have done this better or whatnot? And it's like, you know what? You just got to keep pushing. If the door is closed, you got to break it down. If you know that you have, or at least have that will inside of you to make some changes, and you know what those changes need to be, and you need to just press on with those, because you're doing the right thing. You know what I mean? And it's like, sometimes it just takes the right person or the right time or whatever, and we never know when that is. It could be tomorrow at 5 p.m. Somebody just happens to see something that you did, and they're like, hey, I need you. You know what I mean? Like, I need your perspective. Come in here. And then, that's how it happens, And so that's a great answer, because you guys are doing it. Your friends, keep with like-minded people who want to make change. And it could be anybody. Anybody could be the next, whoever you want to put up here. Anybody could be it, And so that's awesome. And I'm glad that you are being a change agent in your community. Okay, so I'm on question 6 or 7. Sorry. Okay. Personal question. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Law school. Probably just finishing law school. Playing ball in college. I don't want to go pro. I do not want to go pro. If I choose to go pro, it would probably be to like rack up money to be able to like start my own law firm. But other than that, I'd sort of pull a Maya Moore, what she just did, because who knew that she wanted to become a lawyer? That was amazing. Yeah. But that's probably
the basketball player, right? That's Maya Moore, the basketball player. Yeah.
She, WNBA. So WNBA. Yes, Maya Moore. She just freed someone. Her husband, who was wrongfully convicted a few years back.
Okay, wow.
And she was like, hey, and she beat the system, and they were like, wow, and she got him out of prison, and they're now married. And I do believe she dropped basketball and was like, I'm going to be a lawyer now. So she really was like an inspiration. So
great. So you would say she's a mentor for you, right?
Yes.
Awesome. We got hey, Maya Moore. Hey. Kairi, she's right here, man. We got to link y'all up. I'm all act like I got connections and stuff. I got no connections, but hey, somebody probably does. So, but yeah, I remember watching Maya Moore, dude. She is an amazing basketball player, and like you said, I had no idea she was doing law. So I'm gonna find her on Instagram. I'm gonna follow her and see what she's doing, because I like to hear stories like that, and I like to see people who are inspiring the next generation. To do things, and that's big. And she probably doesn't even know that she's inspiring, young girls like you to go and do these types of things. And so it's really important. So, we never know who's watching, you know what I mean? And that's awesome. Okay, so I am on question number 8, it looks like. Okay. You know what? I'll ask it. Okay. Would you feel comfortable asking your local police department to put on a training for you and your peers? And what would the training be? Or what would you want the training to be?
Would I feel comfortable asking them? My local police department? Yeah. I think I'd feel pretty comfortable. Because again, I haven't had a bad experience with an officer. I don't really have a problem talking to people. As you can see, I'm an extrovert. I just go. But what type of training would it be? Is that a question like what would we?
Yeah, what would you want the police department to train you about? Like if you had police officers come and train you and your friends, like what would you ask them to? What would you want to know, pretty much, from your local police department?
How to read body language when it comes to dealing with someone. Also, de-escalation would probably be another one. So
yeah, those are good. There's a lot of great de-escalation training. We do it a lot. And it's funny when I was going through the class again, because it's a pretty new thing, but I'm like, dude, I've been de-escalating since day one, and so, but it's something that, a lot of people need, you need to learn that it's how important it is to de-escalate every situation. Even when you're having a one-on-one conversation with somebody and it starts getting hostile, you still need to learn how to de-escalate even in your daily, and when you have kids, you'll learn how to de-escalate them because, man, they be going crazy and it's hard. And so you kind of get that when you have kids too. So, but don't rush, get that law degree first and then. Okay. So, question number 9 I am on. What is the last thing you did for self-care?
The last thing I did for self-care. I took a shower earlier and I combed my crazy hair out. And I deep conditioned it. I did a detox. I ate like a whole bunch of sweet potatoes earlier this week, and drank a whole bunch of water. So my dad's like, "You're dehydrated." Basketball. So
yeah.
Slow running my suicides. He's like, "Drink more water." So that's probably the last thing I did for self-care, and reading. I don't read often. Yeah, mom and dad, because I know they're watching, but sometimes when I just get like the level of just stressed out, I'm like, okay, I need a book. It gets to that point. So, yeah.
No, that's great. And you have a lot of great books above you. Have you read all of those?
No.
Okay. They're on your list, right?
I started them, but like I went back and forth.
I'm the same way. I got a bunch of books that I've started. My wife makes fun of me. My wife reads like 30 to 40 books a year, but probably more than that. I think she's probably 50, 60. Oh, she's quick. Like we'll be reading together, and she'll be like 10 pages ahead of me, and I'll be on page 1 still. And I'm like, how are you flipping? Like you're not even reading the book, but she's a really good reader. So, and then when you're talking about combing the hair, it just really made me think. You're talking about that's self-care for you, so that's a de-stressor. For me, that's stressful because my daughter's got some locks. Her hair is long, and it is really hard to comb out. So I can't wait until she gets old enough to where she can do it herself, so that she can have her self-care moment. So then daddy doesn't have his stressful moment trying to comb all that hair out. So definitely. Okay. So I'm gonna ask you another question. So this is gonna be the 10th one. So this one is about, how do you feel about the defunding the police movement happening right now?
I don't agree with it, but I don't completely disagree. I think a lot of people misuse the term when it comes to, defunding the police. If you defund the police, there's not really anybody that you're going to call when you're in trouble. Because, normally it's police, and then, it's firefighter, EMTs, ambulance, people like that, they all come. I think there needs to be more money put into different areas of policing that'll cause, that gap that the community's talking about to grow thinner. You know what I mean? But I don't completely agree with just getting rid of it altogether. That makes no sense. But yeah,
No, that's a great perspective, and I'm right along with you. Like I don't agree with the way that it's done in some cities. It's like you said, people misuse it, and so it's like people think defund, abolish, like that's all a part of it. We're getting rid of so that we can do something else. And really, there are alternatives. but are they the right thing for your community? And so it really needs to be a community discussion where you bring everybody together and figure out the best way to move forward. Is it, hey, we want these programs, so we can kind of move some funds over to do this instead of some of the things that we may not need to do. But those are the discussions that need to happen, but it has to be together, and it can't be like a punitive, like, hey, we don't like you, so this is what we're going to do, and then you have to backtrack and be like, okay, well, dang, how do we fix this mess that we created? And so, it really has to be something that the entire community can agree on and say, hey, this is how we want our police to be. And I have my ideas with that, and solutions that I feel like would be great for most communities, but it may not work for all the communities, it may not even work for my community. But you have to have these discussions and keep everybody in there to make it to where it's something that we came up together. So now everybody's invested in making it a better community, you know what I mean? But when you have cut people off, then you have low morale. And so you don't want low morale police officers that feel like everybody hates them. And now we're going back to what we had before, and there's just more fear on the streets.
Right.
So that was great. And I think that was my last question, Kairi. I'm so glad I'm off the hook. But you're awesome. I love your answers.
All right. So that was our 20th question, which means we have one more question, officer, and that's from our community audience. This question can either be towards me or it could be towards you, it could be towards both of us. So we didn't really know. So whatever the community question is, we'll take it from there. So, Officer Bohannon. All right.
All right. You want me to read it?
You can read it. It doesn't matter. I'll read it. It's fine. So Officer J. Bohannon, Florida public school education is severely lacking adequate diversity for race relations today. What is your opinion? Is there a lack of Afrocentricity in the Texas public education? And what do you think can be done?
Now, I will be honest, and thank you for the question, Mr. Schuler. I'll be honest, I'm not, my wife is a school counselor, so I know a little bit about education. I would say that it is lacking. But I would say we have to think about this, and pretty much everything we do kind of, and I always do this kind of on a generational term. You know what I mean? It's like, when I was growing up, what was glorified for me was being an athlete, being an entertainer. And that was a glorified thing because that's what I saw. You know what I mean? I didn't have that many Black teachers or educators. I had one Black principal at my school, and in my middle school, and that was pretty much after that. That was pretty much it. You know what I mean? And so I think what we need to do is really start glorifying and lifting up, the people that are actually doing it. Our educators, we're lifting up our lawyers, our bank managers, and showing people a better way. And so it's hard because, entertainment is a big thing. Our biggest people who are followed the most are entertainers. They're athletes. That's what I meant to say. They're athletes too. And so that's the big people that we see, that we glorify. They're like, man, they got this because they're able to do this. And now a lot of kids grow up thinking that that's what they have to do. Now I'm realizing that we have a lot of great educators, we have a lot of great principals, we have a lot of great people. And I feel like, it doesn't have to be, it has to be Black people or white or whatever, but that education piece that I had talked about earlier is a big component about it. And so a lot of even educators don't really understand, the ills or the bad things that may be happening, especially in these communities. So they may not be able to communicate with their kids as much. And so having more diversity is always a great way to at least bring new perspectives and different perspectives so that somebody can actually look something at holistically, instead of what I was talking about earlier with their half truths and having, these kids, they need to just, do this or stop being single parent, kids, and then they'll be all right. Their parents need to do this and that. But you need more people that actually understand them and can speak to them so that they can be successful and become educators. I'm sorry, that was a long answer. I told you, Kairi, I'm bad at this.
All right. Well, that is it for today. Thank you, Officer Bohannon, for coming on and having this amazing talk with me. I really appreciate it. I hope I didn't scare you too much.
Oh, Kairi, you could never scare me. Ever. This was amazing. Thank you so much. This platform, use it. Like we said earlier, you be the change. You know what I mean? It's within everybody. If you feel like you have something, you have to let that light shine on it and spread it with the world, because really that's all we need is love. And that's what you're doing. And so I appreciate you. I applaud you. Anything that I could do for you, you let me know. I can't wait till I can fly to Florida one day when my wife lets me. And then, we can have a big powwow, or, we can hopefully go to like Disney World or something. I'll bring my kids. And we
can Thank you so much. All right, guys. So that's it for today. But I have one last question for Officer Bohannon. That would probably be, do you still have love for me, Officer Bohannon? We still got love for each other.
Oh, I do. Just like 50. Just like 50. That was my college song. You know what I mean?
Wonderful. So, all right, Officer Bohannon, we'll see you next time. Don't forget to tune into our next show, guys. Our next interviewee will be Commander Mark Clavecombe from the Melbourne Police Department. Thank you for that. I would like to also thank our sponsors one more time: Seed Concierge, Central Station, Ben & Jerry's, thank you, the Birdie Eco School, and the Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Florida. Thank you guys for tuning in. See you guys next time.